I just need something to like point, like.
The broadcast of the regular meeting of the Minneapolis Board of Estimate and Taxation will now begin.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this live broadcast of our virtual meeting. This meeting includes the remote participation of members as authorized under Minnesota Statute 16, Section 13D-021 due to the declaration of a local health pandemic. For the record, my name is Carol Becker. I am the president of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. I will now call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll so we may verify the presence of a quorum.
Not hearing.
Thank you. Board Member Fry.
Here.
Cogill.
Here.
Wheeler.
Present.
Bender.
Here.
Fletcher.
Here.
President Becker.
All right.
There are 6 members present.
Now, before we begin the meeting, I'd like to officially welcome Councilmember Stephen Fletcher to the board. It's his second meeting. I apologize, Mr. Fletcher, for not having welcomed you the first meeting. I was pretty nervous about doing this remotely, and so I missed actually welcoming you to the board, and I'd like to make that up and welcome you and see if you want to make any remarks to our little 150-year-old board here.
Thank you for that, and no apology needed. I appreciate the opportunity to join you all. I know there's an important function here, watching the finances of the city, and I'm excited to be a part of it.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
We will now proceed to our agenda, a copy of which was posted for public access to the city's legislative information system, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. So the agenda for today's meeting is before us. May I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We have a proper motion before us. Is there any discussion before the clerk calls a roll? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion.
Board Member Fry.
Aye.
Cogill.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
President Becker.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes and no nays.
Motion passes. The agenda is adopted. Next item is the adopting of the minutes from the April 22nd meeting. I have a motion to adopt the minutes.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any discussion before the clerk calls the roll? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion.
Board Member Fry.
Aye.
Cogill.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
President Becker.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes and no nays.
That motion passes. The minutes are accepted as presented. So I'd like to move on to the discussion items. Item 4 on the agenda is receiving the results of a compensation study for elected positions of the Board of Estimate and Taxation. To clarify, that is not people who are serving on another board, but only serving on this board as elected officials. Mr. Hobby.
President Becker, I'll take a few minutes to cover the summary of the report, and we've got that on the display here. Accompanying this summary, there is a longer report attached to the agenda, but I'm not going to go into that detailed report unless there's a question that points specifically to that report. A few months back, I was asked to take a look at compensation information for entities similar to BET in conjunction with myself. We have the clerk's office and human resources who had discussions on this matter. In the process of doing the research, I looked out at metro area type entities, non-metro entities, including those in Minnesota and outside Minnesota across the United States, basically looking for two characteristics. One is that one or more board members of these entities be elected at large. And the second characteristic, that the equivalent Board of Estimate and Taxation be charged with being essentially a gatekeeper or quasi-gatekeeper for the taxes, or set like our current RBET here, setting the maximum tax rate. I could not find any entity that was exactly like our Minneapolis Board of Estimate and Taxation. Generally speaking, most of these are serving as boards within the city environment, usually staffed with city employees, basically appointed type individuals. So we kind of struck out with trying to find an apples to apples comparison, with the assumption that such entities, whatever they might be compensating our current board members, that we could translate that across the board. Although we didn't have what I would call comps, we did come up with three approaches to provide you with some information to consider, not necessarily looking for a response today or a conclusion today. The three, and I'll cover those 3 points. The first one was to do an inflation adjustment using the current $35 per meeting amount that our 2 elected members currently receive. So that rate was set in 1975, and adjusting for inflation, that rate would be $167.70 per meeting, or $335.40 per month if you're looking at this on a monthly basis. Currently, board members, if we were doing 2 meetings a month at $35 a meeting, I believe the math is $840 per year. After the inflation adjustment, we looked at the compensation of current council members, and the rationale for that is the fact that the council members are representing the entire city when they're doing council business, similar or identical to our current BET 2 directly elected officials. So with that approach, we took the council members' salary and did some math there with some assumptions, but using the rate of about $50 an hour for council members, that would translate to 50. We're assuming $50 per meeting for BET members, or $100 per month. Extending that per year, that of course would be $1,200. However, the 2 BET elected members, President Becker and Vice President Wheeler, both pointed out that they put in more than a single hour, the single meeting. There's additional time spent supporting the board's role. So I had estimates of between 8 and 16 hours. Just for discussion purposes, I plugged in 12 hours. So 12 hours per month at $50 an hour would be $600 a month if you're doing a monthly calculation. Of course, per meeting would be half of that. The next approach, the third and last approach, looking at the the two BET members and currently receiving a total compensation of about $840 per year, and dividing that back by the number of meetings is $35 per meeting. So we took the council member's current salary and divided it by an assumed 20 meetings per month, and that is an assumption which somebody can increase or decrease, but with that assumption, we're coming up with $430 per meeting or $680 per month. Just one or two other points here. One is the thought that it might be better to put compensation on a monthly basis rather than a per meeting basis, because the fact that the BET members' time is spent over and above just the BET meetings themselves. I think that's kind of the basic essence of what the report is covering. Other questions?
Have any other points? Okay, we'll stand for questions. I would note to the board members that we're not taking any actions today. We're simply receiving and file this. So if you have any questions for now, that'd be great. And if not, when we bring this back in the future, we'll have a second opportunity for questions.
I'd like to say a word if I could, President Becker.
Okay.
I'm the one who sort of requested this thing, and I thought it was important that we do the research, and I want to say thank you to Alan for having been very thorough and done a lot of work. And it's kind of nice to have it done now, because we don't have to take action on this till even next year. We want to make sure it happens before the elections are. It's a real honor to serve on the Board of Estimate and Taxation. I love it, and clearly I did it for the $35 a meeting. I mean, that's the reason that I ran. It's basically a volunteer job, except it's a lot more than that. And I know I put in huge hours this past year as we were seeking to find new staff and to do that. And I was glad to do it. I did it as a citizen and as a contribution to the city. But I think that it would make sense for us to reconsider something that hasn't changed in many years. I think in the early 1900s, when it started, there was a maximum of $500 a year. Well, if you run out the math on that as to what's happened since then, it would be considerably higher. So I think it's a good study. I think it's a jump off point. We certainly don't need to take action on it, but I'm very grateful that Alan has done this. And I'm glad that we're going to receive this report, and we can come back and visit when it seems an appropriate time to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other comments? Mr. Fletcher.
Thank you, President Becker. I just want to comment. I think this is a good topic to be discussing. It feels like in the before times when this was requested, it probably felt like an interesting thing to take up, and I'm glad we're not taking action today, because I would have been very uncomfortable at a moment of wage freeze and hiring freeze, having much of a conversation about this beyond sort of receiving the report. And I do think it's provocative that we weren't able to find a sort of comparable board, in other places in looking at this. And I think that sometimes when you ask research questions, you find slightly different answers than what you were looking for. And, that's certainly worth us reflecting on. But in general, I'll just signal that I think public servants should be compensated in a way that would allow everybody to participate without sort of barriers to entry. And when we revisit this conversation, it's worth digging into that a little more.
Thank you. Other comments? Other discussion? Anyone else? Other comments? Other discussion? I will say I do agree with you, Mr. Fletcher, that I think people should be compensated fairly, and I do this as basically a volunteer gig. and put way more money into it than I ever got back. And I don't regret that for 1 minute, but I do want to make sure that we have good candidates. And, you know, I don't know that I want everybody to have to function like I've had to. So I would like to do this in enough time that people who are considering running for the board will know what their compensation may be. So it doesn't have to be now, it doesn't have to be next month or even the month after, but sometime, enough time for people to make a decision, I think would be important. Any other comments? Any other comments? Going once, going twice. So clerk, this is a receive and file, I believe, correct?
Correct, President Becker, and without objection, you can receive and file the report.
Okay, without objection, we'll receive and file the report. Thank you. So that takes us to item 5 on the agenda, resolutions related to the spring bond sale, authorizing the issuance and sale of $90 million of general obligation bonds. Staff presentation.
So moved. Oh, do we need a motion? Do we need a motion before it's explained?
We were going to do the staff presentation and then a motion to adopt the resolutions.
Sounds good.
Clerk, do we do the motion first and then the presentation?
Madam President, yes, you are correct.
Okay.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Madam President, I would say that you should call on staff for their presentation.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry if I got that backwards.
We're all figuring it out together. Staff, could we have a presentation, please?
Evening, this is Mike Ablin from the City of Minneapolis Finance Department. Not sure if you wanted to just talk about what's in the bond sale or if you had specific questions. I don't have a formal document to share per se, but the document would be the resolution that you should have received. So this is the typical spring bond sale, we call it, for the capital improvements for the city of Minneapolis. It's got several components to it for the water and sewer departments of the city. There's a portion for the parking fund. It's got special assessment bonds that for work done last year. And it's got many projects for the upcoming cycle of street improvements, street lighting projects, etc. The amount is $90,750,000, and we're hoping to issue those bonds in June. I don't know if you guys have additional questions that you'd want me to answer, or other questions that about the resolution before you.
Does anyone have any questions? Anyone have any questions? I did have one note, which I did speak with Mr. Ablin earlier. There are a couple of very old projects on here. I went back and looked. I was wrong, Mr. Ablin. You have like 2 fire station projects, one from like 2015 that we're finally issuing the last of the bonds on in 2016. That seems a long time to leave projects sitting there and not issuing bonds. So I was a little concerned about that, just as a FYI. As well as I was just a little confused on we're doing bonds for this year for assessments for this year, but I didn't know how we could assess for this year because tax statements have gone out and they would have to go up for next year, but I suspect it's probably just a typo or something. So just a couple of items. Anyone else? Questions? Anyone else have questions? All right, if I see I have no questions, then we have half a motion, I believe, to adopt the resolutions. So I think Mr. Wheeler made a motion. I need a second on that.
Second.
Thank you. We have a proper motion before us. Is there any more discussion before the clerk calls the roll? Thank you, Mr. Ablin. All right, a 2/3 vote is required to adopt the resolution. Clerk, if you could call the roll.
Board Member Fry.
Aye.
Cogill.
Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye.
Fletcher.
Aye.
President Becker.
Aye.
There are 6 ayes and no nays.
That motion passes. The resolutions are adopted. Do we have any direction to staff? Any direction to staff at this point? Any agenda items for the next meeting that anyone has that they're concerned that want to get on the agenda?
I would appreciate receiving updates about, and I know our finance office staff has been working miracles. I know there's been lots of good leadership by lots of people on this, but I would appreciate some sort of update about how we're moving along and how things are looking as the body that is responsible for the sort of the overall stewardship of the budget and setting tax levies and doing all the capital bonding. I think it would be important that we would get some of the updates that perhaps others are getting, and I would request that. And they can go out as PDFs or emails, but I think we need to be updated on where we are as a city. And again, I want to salute the great work that's happening in challenging times and the responsibility that so many people are showing. And I've been able to reassure citizens of Minneapolis and others that we've got really good leadership in all this area right now. And anyway, that's my one bit of request.
I would like to also support Mr. Wheeler's request for some data on what is happening with the city's finances. I know we're not going to see collection numbers for property taxes because the county has allowed people to delay those payments. We should know by now sales tax numbers. Also the question of whether or not people are paying their water and sewer bills or they're not. We'll have a big indicator on whether or not they're going to be able to pay the property taxes. So some of just the overall revenues would be very helpful as those numbers are coming in. I appreciate as I'm working on these issues in another governmental entity. It's hard to get data that is coming in that quickly, but if you do have data, even from the last month or two, it would just be very helpful to just have a picture of what's going on. So I would also appreciate that. Any other comments or questions? Thank you, Ms. Johnson. We appreciate that. Then with that, we've concluded all the business to come before the board. Without objection, we stand adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.